And now you all know that we're recording.
Got
Great.
it.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. And I'm just going to start us out with a blessing from, this is one of my favorite blessing books to bless the space between us, John O'Donohue. I highly recommend it. It's a blessing for a leader. And just so you know, we are so grateful for your callings, but we're so grateful for who you are as people called into this living. So receive these words as blessing. May you have the grace and wisdom to act kindly, learning to distinguish between what is personal and what is not. May you be hospitable to criticism. May you never put yourself at the center of things. May you act not from arrogance, but out of service. May you work on yourself, building up and refining the ways of your mind. May those who work for you know you see and respect them. May you learn to cultivate the art of presence in order to engage with those who meet you. When someone fails or disappoints you, may the graciousness with which you engage be their stairway to renewal and refinement. May you treasure the gifts of the mind through reading and creative thinking, so that you continue as a servant of the frontier, where the new will draw its enrichment from the old, and you never become a functionary. May you know the wisdom of deep listening, the healing of wholesome words, the encouragement of the appreciative gaze, the decorum of held dignity, the springtime edge of the bleak question. May you have a mind that loves frontiers so that you can evoke the bright fields that lie beyond the view of the regular eye. May you have good friends to mirror your blind spots. May leadership be for you a true adventure of growth. Amen. All right. Well, thanks for being here to help us evaluate CGP as storytellers. This is the way in that we thought would be most effective, since that's our calling is to be storytellers. So Grady, I'm going to kick it to you, and then you're going to kick it to Susan.
Yeah, I just will be very brief. We're intending this time together to just give you the information and answer questions. But I want to just emphasize a point with this whole work that we're doing of supporting each other, is that we're putting a lot of effort into evaluating every little bit of it, so that we can continue to build on and improve. Our singular focus is the well-being of our leaders. And so that's something that we're feeling, like for such a time as this. I mean, it's always a difficult thing, I think, leading in the way that we do. We have very special roles in our communities, and they're joyful in a lot of ways, and they're difficult. And so we want to get the whole of it. This process that Susan Lang is going to explain is one that we didn't invent. We're building off of. This is used with many nonprofits as a way to kind of lift up different themes so that we can lean into it. You might be aware that we have the Gallup Q12 clergy survey that's open right now. So if you haven't participated in that, please do so. But that's one arm where we're evaluating some broader information in our context, which is really focused in on our two synods, the Southeast and Southwest. And so we're using all of the data we can to shape and continue to mold the kind of culture you deserve as leaders, and we want to have together to take care of ourselves and to follow this call faithfully as long as we are physically able. So part of this, Susan Lang is a part of our team as our external evaluator, and I'm just going to hand it over to her to explain a little bit more about this process, and then we'll answer questions. Susan.
All right, thanks, Grady. Yeah, so I work with a lot of different organizations around evaluation. And this technique that we're using is something that I've seen in a lot of different ways. It started from in an international development context. I see it in education, nonprofits, a lot of things. So it's really a way to try to systematically get stories. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. All right. Now I'm going to share my screen. All right, everybody can see that? All's good? Okay. So the process that we're using, as Grady said, is called the most significant change process. And it's really a way to capture stories. And so what's significant, what this tool actually is it is an evaluation technique that is recognized across the field of evaluation as one that has a systematic component to it, a rigor to it, as something that is a legit way to evaluate a program. So I'm really excited to use that in this context because I think rostered leaders are good at telling stories in many respects. I think that's part of your gift that you bring to your field. But what I also really like about it and what I think is important is it's participatory. So as opposed to sometimes an evaluation, the evaluator evaluates the program and it's sort of a top-down thing. This is really about empowering you as rostered leaders to decide what really is significant. So what are the changes that you see that are important? And not only do you decide those changes, but you participate in the analysis of the data, the stories themselves, by determining what you think is most significant. So I think that's really powerful because I think CGP is not something that's being done to you. It's something that we're doing with you. It's by you, with you. So we really feel like your participation and your wisdom and your expertise is something that we want to embrace and have reflected in the evaluation. The other thing that I like about this process is it allows for self-reflection. We as human beings are terrible at this. We think that we can remember what it was like before, but there is oodles and oodles of data that shows that as human beings, we're not great at that. We continue to reset our baseline. And so we don't always understand the actual change that's happened unless we're deliberate in taking the time to think about that. And so I really like this process because it's asking you as rostered leaders to actually take the time to think back to kind of pre-CGP and where you were at compared to where you are now. And so I think that's powerful both as an individual, but also powerful from a programmatic standpoint for us to take advantage of people being deliberate about self-reflecting. So what are we going to do with this stuff? It's giving us information to improve CGP. That's something that is really important. We don't know exactly how to do this. We've got a lot of theories of how things we think should work, but we're learning as we go. And I think that's the sign of a good program, is one that is continually getting more information and reflecting that and revising and improving as we go. And I think CGP does a great job with that. And then also understanding the impact of CGP. How is this program making a difference, both to you specifically as an individual, as well as to rostered leaders as a whole in Southeast and Southwest Minnesota. There will be time for questions at the end. If it's a question you feel like must be answered at this exact moment, feel free to jump in and ask, but otherwise I'll leave time for questions at the end. All right. So who's participating in this process? This is the inaugural use of the CGP, or I'm sorry, of the most significant change process for CGP, and we are asking 6 small groups to participate. We've selected 3 colleague groups and 3 Future Hope cohort small groups. Future Hope, for those of you that are not aware of that, is a program that the CGP is sponsoring for First Call rostered leaders. So we have 3 groups from each of those categories. Also CGP staff, so Laura and Grady and I will have a role in this process, as well as the liaisons and the advisory board, and we'll talk specifically about that as we go along. So how does this thing work? So step 1 is we're going to be sharing a writing prompt, and we want you to share your story about the most significant change you've noticed in yourself as a result of the CGP. Yes, we are actually asking you to write this down, and we want you to consider your full experience with all CGP programming over the last year. So not just this colleague group or cohort small group that you're in, but other kinds of programming that you've participated in with the CGP. And then we want you to email that story to Laura, and we'll give you some more details on that. Step 2, once you've completed writing your story, we are going to be setting up, Laura and Grady will be setting up meetings with your colleague groups or small groups. And the whole purpose of that meeting is to share your stories with each other. So we're actually asking you to read your story to your group. And once the group has gone through and listened to all the stories, the group is going to select one story to move forward as the most significant change story for your group. So you may ask, how do we select that? And the answer is up to you. Really, what we want is for your group to have the conversation of what is most significant, and select a story that's reflective of what you think is most significant. So different groups may do it different ways, but again, back to that participatory concept, we are relying on the wisdom of the group to make the decision for what is most significant. So step 3 is one of those stories coming out of each of those groups. And for those of you that were paying attention, that will be 6 stories because we have 6 groups. Those stories are going to be used by CGP staff, liaisons, and advisory board members to better assess the impact of the CGP and understand themes that are coming out of those stories. And we did want to make sure to let you know that if you so desire, the identifying details from the stories can be removed before they're shared with the liaisons and the advisory board. So names, locations, those kind of things, we can remove those from the stories to make those more anonymous. So the writing prompt is this: looking back over your last year's involvement with the CGP, what has been the most significant change for you in one of the following areas? Your sense of being equipped as a rostered leader, your sense of confidence and or satisfaction in ministry, and your sense of overall health, mental, physical, and spiritual as a rostered leader. And then we'd also like you to tell us a story about this change, as well as how it has made a difference for you now, or how you see this change making a difference in the future. So again, 1 to 2 pages, double spaced. And we want you to consider your experience with all CGP programming, so not just the small group experience or colleague group experience. We really encourage you to share details and specificity. Those things really, as storytellers, you're aware of that probably anyway, but those make stories, the details and the specific pieces to that. And that also gives us more data for insight as to what, how this change was significant. And so again, thinking about those details. We also encourage you to be honest. So don't just tell us what you think we want to hear. We really are honestly interested in the real impact of this program. We certainly hope that the most significant change for you is a positive one. But if that's not the case, then that's not the case. And we want to understand the reality of the change that this program has made for you. And finally, 1 week before your colleague group or small group is going to meet, we ask you to email Laura the story that you completed. So for those of you who are procrastinators, then we're encouraging you to get it done, as well as making sure that all those things are ready to go for the small group meeting. Maybe you're not procrastinators, I don't know, but I seem to know stories of pastors that are scrambling at the last minute to write sermons. So maybe this is the case for some of you as well. If you looked at the form that Laura sent out, there's a couple of options that we shared in the page for writing the story. The first one is, I'm willing to share my story as written, or the second option, I'd like my story to have identifying details such as names, locations removed before it's shared. So that's giving us feedback from you, how you'd like us to handle the information in your story. And you have it from CGP staff leadership that we take we recognize the trust that you have in sharing this information with us. So we recognize and acknowledge that and appreciate that. And also we'll be respectful of your desire in sharing that information going forward. And then we also ask if you're willing to talk more about your story being used in publication. And by publication, we do things. We have to do reporting to Lily on a regular basis. And there may be other things where we might be interested in sharing some component of a story. And that's something we would never do without reaching out to you about that. But if that's something that you would consider and be willing to do, we would just want to ask about that. Stories are powerful. I mean, I think you know that anyway, but in the evaluation world, I mean, there's data and numbers and stats and all those things are fine and great, but a story has a different kind of power than some of those things. And especially those things, stories used in conjunction with some more data based type evaluation techniques is a really powerful way to talk about impact. And one of the things with Lily is we want them to understand, we certainly want to understand ourselves, but also Lily to understand the impact that their dollars are making in the lives of our rostered leaders. So that really is an important part of the work that we're doing. When is this happening? The plan is that these stories are going to be crafted in January. With your colleague and small groups meeting in January and February. And Grady and Laura are going to be reaching out to your individual groups to work on scheduling a meeting that's convenient for each of your groups. So that process will be taking place in January and meeting in January, February. And that's it. And again, this is a little slide, but it's certainly heartfelt. We really do want to appreciate your participation in the CGP, but also very much in advance, share our appreciation for you participating in this story. My experience has been, and what I've seen from other clients is, and other evaluators that have used this is actually a very powerful process, powerful for the participants, and also powerful for the leadership of organizations to really see in real terms how things are changing because of this work. And so I think you will find this as a powerful process for you and for your small group. And I certainly am expecting that it will be powerful for our liaisons and our advisory boards as they see the real life impact of the work of CGP. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and first see if Laura and Grady have anything they want to add from, if I missed an obvious important point or something, and then open it up for questions. Grady, Laura?
No, I thank you, Susan. I think you laid it out really clearly. Love to answer any questions. Did that make sense to you all?
I'm seeing heads nodding. That's a good sign.
Yes, I also may have not read the email properly because I thought that paper was due today, like before
Oh.
this. Funny.
Shoot.
But I felt inspired, so I got it in, but then I read it and there were some typos. So there'll be some time to edit that, Laura.
Man, so
Get a
that's
gold star, Matthew. I mean,
Procrastinator,
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah.
so you like beat the assignment before it was actually assigned. That is that's impressive. So for the rest of you though, do not feel bad. That was not required by any stretch. So
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for that. And we really, as this is meant to not be another thing on your plate, another heavy thing. There will be, and Susan mentioned this, in telling our stories, hopefully we'll jiggle something for you that might help you realize that, just to give thanks, if you will, that you're not alone and haven't been alone. And as we look to the years that stretch in front of us, we walk together and are building something to make that journey just a little bit better. That's our intention every single year. And so we talked about the publication aspect of this. I guess I would like to say one thing about that, because it is reporting to Lily, and it's fine to share stories in anonymity, and we can do that. And it's also when we're able to share that detail, it really takes on another reality, and it has this opportunity. And this from all that we do from a ministry standpoint. Hope is this thing, that is a gift, that is just something that is just showers upon us. And at the same time, hope is also something we can nurture and hold together and give to one another. And when we tell our stories, they become those containers that can inspire and open up opportunities for us to tell more stories. And so we don't have to look very hard to hear the stress stories, and to hear, oh, how hard it is. And that's to not say that it isn't, because we know it is. And in the midst of it, there is so much for us to be grateful for, and there's a lot going right. And so as we listen for, the harder themes, as well as the happier themes that we're looking at, that's the sort of thing that we're going to be able to lean into. And ultimately, as we're building for the future, there's people who want to invest in you as leaders, and we want to give them the way to do that. And so through these stories, we'll also inspire philanthropy, and that sense of respect for the office that you hold. And that's also what happens through some of these things. So with your stories, it might be that, the first step is really just simply with your colleagues, taking time for some self-reflection and sharing what it's been like to be you in the CGP this last year. And then as we go forward, there may be opportunities to have a wider impact on the telling of that story. So all of them are going to matter, even though as a group you're going to pick one to push forward. We're going to prayerfully and gratefully hold all of them. So other questions? Ingrid, you're muted.
Good point. Thank you. That's helpful. I wanted to check with just trying to understand, when I hear the word story, I'm thinking of like something with a beginning, middle, and end. And so as we are meeting with our colleague group to bring forward one story, does that mean that we are picking one person's beginning, middle, and end to move forward? Or does moving on one story mean that there might be pieces of multiple people's story that are around the same theme or idea that are being moved forward as a group, even though those were not like a beginning, middle, and end submitted by one person? Does that make sense?
yeah, so we're asking you to pick one one to two page document that was
Oh.
written by one person to move forward. You may see the same theme happening in a lot of your stories. And again, so the story, you decide how rigid you're going to be in the story format as far as beginning, middle, end. I mean, there is no end probably, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
we want to see where this go. And one of the things we are asking is, how has this change impacted you now, or do you think will impact you in the future? But you're going to pick one to two page document to move forward. But you may see that again with those themes, you're going to need to pick one. And the power in this process is picking the one, because it really leads to some interesting conversations around values, and not that the ones, again, Grady said this, the other stories are not unvaluable or not valuable by any means, but which one is the most significant? And you as a group are going to go through that process of deciding. And again, it sounds kind of vague and wishy-washy, but it works. It's a process that works. And so have faith in the process. And I think as a group, you're going to learn some things about yourself and about your others in your group, and hopefully about the CGP and those things can be shared with us as well. Did that answer your question?
That does. It's helpful to know that it's one,
Yeah.
one page, one to two page document that will be passed forward. So thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes so how do you vote? That's an interesting question. And there's actually there's a lot of documentation about this process. For those of you who care and want more information, please feel free to reach out to me and I will share with you a 400-page document about this process. But, do you rate the stories, your top, your middle? Do you use some kind of weighting thing? Do you vote thumbs up for which one you think is most significant? You guys are going to kind of work that out. Your groups aren't that big, so that's going to be informal too. But the whole process of thinking about this and first sharing and then thinking and processing, that's again the beauty of this participatory process, is that's something that you're going to learn and change from just by being part of this. And so the impact of this kind of goes forward. So again, I'm really interested to see how this goes. And I think it will be interesting to see what your groups decide. And I also love watching Cathy's guy who's fixing her house in the background. It's very entertaining. He seems to be working very hard. So I think maybe you've hired a good person. So other questions? All right, I'm not hearing any. And we really want to be respectful of your time. So the hope with this was to kind of get everybody oriented. So when you get the form, it's not a difficult thing, and you've had some time to kind of be thinking about this in the back of your mind. And so, and again, the change can be very small, like something little, but that something little can be significant. It can be how you start your morning to how you think about ministry. It can be you are going to have to think about that and figure that out for yourself. So I think be open to what that might be over the next few weeks.
So thanks you. And so the next step will be to spend some time reflecting. And as I've thought of this myself, it may help you to think that, what other major things have been going on that may have impacted you as well, and how has maybe the CGP been a counter or, something within that. So, just this time reflecting will be really useful. Laura and I will facilitate the scheduling of each of your groups. So we'll follow up. And again, we're looking into January, February, to give ourselves some space here. And it's going to be what's going to work for the group. So it'll work for you. And those that weren't able to attend this session, that's why we're recording it. So everybody that's in the 6 identified groups will be able to have the same set of information. We'll follow up with you to find a time. And then Laura and I will be a part of your group experience. But the group, as Susan explained, will make the decision of which of the stories to go forward, and then we'll take it from there. So thanks again for everybody. Any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Laura or Susan or myself. Thanks for all that you do. Have a good day. Laura, any last thought?
Peace out.
Peace out. Matt, can you write a 20-page paper about, just kidding.
Done.
Done.
Yeah,
Already
he's on
did it.
He's on it. Yeah, and thanks to Cathy's siding guy. It's been the highlight.
Yeah, really
Cathy.
good.
Yep. All right.
God
Thanks.
bless you all.
everybody.
Take care. Have a good day.
Time.